So The Matrix Resurrections, it was released December 22nd, 2021 in theaters and on HBO Max. Directed by Lana Wachowski. She was the only Wachowski to come back to be a part of this film. She also co-wrote the screenplay. Features the return of Keanu Reeves and Carrie-Anne Moss as Neo and Trinity, respectively. And going into this movie, I won't say I had lofty expectations, but I was excited. You know, I remember watching the original Matrix as a teenager and was just blown away by it, like most everyone else was when this movie came out, because those who might be younger will forget how influential that movie was. It introduced a lot of technology. It introduced a fighting style, camera techniques, all kinds of effects were born from the original Matrix film. The sequels are very divisive at best. I'm one that I don't entirely dislike them. I actually like Revolutions more than Reloaded. The sequels kind of fell into that trap of being a little too convoluted for me. I've noticed it happens with a lot of franchises. I always think of Pirates of the Caribbean when I think of this analogy. When you get a set of characters together that work so well, why do you branch them off into sequels and have them do their own thing? Because you had Neo and Trinity doing one thing, you had Morpheus doing another, you introduced other characters. And I get you have to do that, but in a way I think you also lose a little bit of the charm and the appeal that made the original so great in the first place. After Revolutions came out, I wasn't sure if we'd ever see a Matrix movie again. I remember hearing about it for years, and in high school and into early college, I was obsessed with movie news. When I would get home from school, the first thing I would do is I would get on the internet and I would look to see any type of updates on movies that I was following. I remember following Superman Returns at length. I remember following blogs that would document the production of those movies and watching videos of, the cornfield being grown from scratch and the house being replicated that was in the original Superman movie. And The Matrix 4 was one that I feel like was always there in what they call development hell. And then we get the news that, there is going to be another Matrix. And here we are almost 20 years after the sequels come out. And I'm thinking, I'm excited for it, but do we really need to go back to that universe? Because they left it open a little bit in Revolutions, but I felt like that story was over and done with. Maybe you tell other stories that happen to take place within that universe, but maybe they don't have Morpheus or Neo or Trinity. Maybe they're mentioned, but branch off into different characters. And they did a really great job with the Animatrix, telling different stories that took place in that universe. I thought the Animatrix was fantastic, and you actually got to see the backstory of how the machines eventually took over and how the Matrix was actually created. So I was excited to go back into that universe. And then I started reading the reviews, and this is why I usually don't read reviews, because they were so divisive right out of the gate. You'd read one that say, this is a return to form of the original movie. And then you have another that says, this is the worst movie of the year. Why did this even happen? I'm giving it a 1 or a 0 out of 10. I don't think you'd ever give a movie a 0 because no one sets out to make a bad movie. So I always give at least a 1 when I do a 1 to 10 score. But, the more I heard about this movie, the more I became kind of skeptical of it. We heard that Lawrence Fishburne wasn't coming back as Morpheus, instead replaced with Yahya Abdul-Mateen. And I thought he did a great job, but it just wasn't the same. But in a way they explain it, it makes sense, but I wish we would have had him play maybe a different character. He could have been an entirely different character set in that world, and I thought he would have been great. But I wish they would have brought back Lawrence Fishburne. Same thing with Smith. Hugo Weaving was unavailable for this movie due to him working on another project. So they brought in Jonathan Groff from Hamilton to play the new Smith. I actually liked his, I wouldn't call it contemporary take on Smith, but it's very different than what Hugo Weaving did. But I still think, much as I said with Abdul Mateen II, you could have still brought Jonathan Groff in to play a different character and not a new version of an existing one. Because when I think of The Matrix, one of the first things I think of is Hugo Weaving as Agent Smith. He has that, just the tone and the way he carried himself was so cold and threatening. Like, he was perfect for that role. And it's different, yes, but it was still missing from this movie. And to kind of go over a little bit of the story. So Neo is back in the Matrix as Thomas Anderson. And this is where we're going to get into kind of the meta aspect of really what carried the first third of the movie. He plays a video game programmer who successfully created a video game franchise called The Matrix that he based off of memories that he has. And I thought it was actually genius of the way the machines put him back into the Matrix to make him think that, oh, these are just memories because it's a story that I conceived, that I created, that I now have success on. I thought was genius. And one of the, I guess, few high points of the movie, and I'll get into my overall thoughts of it here a little bit later on, but I thought that was actually brilliant in how they brought him back in and to kind of explain how he forgot everything but didn't really forget. And that's kind of where this new Morpheus comes in, because he was a character that's essentially a combination of Morpheus and Agent Smith, but he was put into this modal, which is a program that develops other programs. And he was put into the story to bring Neo out of the Matrix, to remind him that, hey, this isn't a real world. So that's a little bit of how they get away with a new actor portraying Morpheus, because it is Morpheus, but also a different take, which I thought was smart given what they did. But again, I still would have preferred Lawrence Fishburne to come back. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. I can't believe he wasn't asked to come back, by the way. That was insane to me. But we also get a glimpse of Neil Patrick Harris's character. We saw him in the trailer. He seems to be playing a therapist. He's actually playing a character called the Analyst, the new version of the Architect. And that gets into why the Matrix is different and explains how Neo and Trinity are back. Basically, the Analyst was there when Neo went back into the Matrix to defeat Smith and dies. And he had this idea because he basically analyzed Neo's source code and realized that as great as the anomaly of Neo is, it's nothing without Trinity. So he rebuilds Neo and Trinity and plugs them back into the Matrix. But they have no memory of each other. Like, they have to be close enough to make this anomaly that powers this new Matrix happen. But they can't be together, otherwise the power is too great to contain. So a lot of the movie, once Neo is freed, it deals with him trying to get Trinity back out of the Matrix. Now, through this, they introduce one cool new character played by Jessica Henwick named Bugs. And I wish that she would have had more to do with this story, because I thought she was great. I thought her martial arts skills were pretty kick-ass. But I feel like once since Neo is brought back out of the Matrix, the movie shifts to focus more on him and not new characters. And I thought this might be a Force Awakens type of thing where Neo and Trinity would play mentor characters to the new generation of people who are out of the Matrix or want to get out of the Matrix. And we also learned that there was a civil war with the machines, and this peace did not last that we saw at the end of Revolutions. So people don't really have the choice to get out of the Matrix. At least that's what I took out of it. And that's another thing that was kind of confusing about the plot of the movie is, do people still have a choice, or do they not? But the way I took it is that they didn't, because this was a brand new Matrix. I did want to go back to more of the meta aspects of it, in that when Smith, who is Neo's boss, is talking with him saying that, our parent company, Warner Brothers, wants to make a new iteration or a new Matrix video game. So we see like the plot of the Matrix 4. And I thought that was kind of cool, in that, Warner Brothers has been trying to get the Wachowskis to make a new Matrix for decades, and they never did. And the story was they were going to do it with or without them. So Lana decided that, she would come back and make this new one. I enjoyed the meta aspects of it to a point. I don't know that I really cared for seeing projections of the original movie when this new Morpheus offers Neo the red pill and says, "Time to fly." We see in the background Lawrence Fishburne's Matrix giving Neo the red pill, and essentially that whole scene being recreated. That was a little much for me. I did like the flashbacks or the cuts in between of, showing that, hey, Jonathan Groff is the new Smith. We could have figured it out on our own as the audience, but I didn't really, it didn't bother me either way. So then we get to the pivotal part of the movie when Neo confronts Trinity about these memories that he's had and the video game that he's created, that all that stuff actually happened, and that her name is not Tiffany, it's Trinity. And they come to the conclusion in the real world that they can unplug Trinity from the Matrix without her having to take the red pill, but she has to make the conscious choice to do it. So eventually she does, and then we get to the ending where the two of them confront the analyst saying that they're going to reshape the Matrix in their own image. We see that Trinity can actually fly as well. She has a lot of the same abilities that Neo has. They fly off into the sunset to reshape the Matrix, and that's where the movie ends. Now, you could make more based off of that. I personally don't think we're going to get another movie, because as much as I wanted to like this movie, I felt it was just average. I thought it was slightly better than the sequels. I enjoyed this movie more. I was a little more invested in the story, but I'll be honest, unless you want to make stories based on other characters and maybe have cameos by Neo and Trinity as, a mentor type combination, I'm kind of done with the Matrix, in my opinion. Like it never quite recaptured the magic of the original movie. And there are aspects of this movie that I like, but in a way it didn't feel like the Matrix. In some aspects it did, but then you take things like the fight choreography, one of the most iconic things about the original movie, and its elegant fighting style that it's become famous for. You don't see that at all in Resurrections. You see, once Neo kind of unlocks his abilities, he does more of like a telekinetic, putting his hands out and throwing people across the room. You see a little bit of martial arts, but not nearly to the effect that you see in the original trilogy. So while I didn't hate this movie, I also didn't love it. Will they carry the story over into other installments? I don't know. I know it didn't do that great at the box office. It didn't do that great on HBO Max. It was pirated a lot, if that's something that you're into. But I don't know. With the lack of box office success, I don't know if we're going to get another Matrix story. On one hand, I'm happy that Neo and Trinity got their happy ending. But other than that, the movie was just okay for me.